Hi, I'm Brian of WVGamers, and today we're going to be talking about a fun card game that, as you could tell by the title, is probably going to be a little questionable for some groups. So if you are not one who likes hearing curse words or anything like that, or any kind of questionable content in your game, although it's very mild, this might be a video that you want to skip. But if you're an adult and you like, humorous little games, you can handle very lightweight kind of jokes and whatnot, then feel free to go ahead and keep watching. For those who can't, I'll give you a couple seconds to press the stop button. All right, so today we're going to be talking about A-hole, or asshole. And in this game, it is basically a remix of a classic card game that's gone by different names because like this is a remix, there have been plenty of other takes on the same game. You might know the game by Castle, Palaces, Presidents, Shitheads. There's little twists on each of those rule sets, but this is going to be this designer's unique take on the same game. It's going to have a little bit of its own humor. I kind of see some of the humor as sort of like if you had a lot of friends who play a lot of Cards Against Humanity or anything like that, this might be a fun game that you can play a traditional card game with them and still get some jokes out now and then. So yeah, let's take a look at what this game has to offer. So the game comes with a deck of cards and some little butthole or asshole tokens. These tokens are going to be what you're awarded to basically at the end of every round that you win. The cards are going to be numbered from 1 to 10, and then there's also going to be some special cards, as you could tell, with some face cards here. We'll talk about what all of the special cards are and basically how the game's going to play. So, your goal each round is to, by the time this deck runs out, at that point we trigger the end of the round, or the end of the round's phase of the game. And at that point, you're trying to get rid of all of your cards in your hand and all the cards that are in front of you, because there's a bottom and a top card, and we'll talk about how that works. So at the beginning of a round, the cards are shuffled, and 3 cards are dealt out in front of everybody, placed face down. These are called the power bottom cards. You will not know what these are until the end of the round when you are starting to play them. And when you play them, they're going to be played completely blind, so you kind of hope that the cards that you're playing go with the rules of the game. Then you're going to be handed 6 cards. Of those 6 cards, you're going to pick 3 of those cards to place on top of the 3 power bottoms. These cards are going to be called the tops. The 3 remaining cards will remain in your hand to be played. Now, at the end of every turn you take, you must have a minimum of 3 cards in your hand. So if you play 1 card, you'll draw 1 card. If you play 2 cards, you'll draw 2 cards, assuming you started that round with 3 cards. There will be a few ways that you may have a whole lot of cards in your hand. In those cases, you will not draw a card. You will only draw whenever you are below 3 cards. So whoever the starting asshole is, and you can either use the rules in the book, which is determined by whoever told their parents, "I love you" last, or you can use your preferred method. Whatever way you want to determine the first player is honestly fine. The first starting asshole will take a card from their hand and play it to the center and then draw. Then the game will continue around the table, going around to each player. So let me get myself back in here. Okay. So the way the game is going to work is you must always play a card to the center that either matches the top number or is higher. Now, there are some face cards that will change those rules, but that's generally what you're trying to do. Now, when you're playing cards, if you happen to have multiple of a card, let's say here, if I had 2 3s, I can go ahead and play those 2 3s on top of that, and that's valid. Well, let's say I had 3 9s. I could play all 3 9s right now and play it on top of this. That's also valid. At that point, you'll draw back up to your hand limit, or your 3-card hand limit, and you're good to go. Now, there are some special cards that will be playable as well, and they can be played on any card. Let's talk about those. So the first up is the go lower, and you see it out here, but let me give you a little closer. As you can imagine, if you're trying to, by normal rules, play cards of equal or higher value, when you play the go lower card, you kind of reverse the rules. You're trying to play cards that are equal or less than the current top card. Skip, sort of like in your traditional game of Uno, will skip the next player that would have been up. Simple as that. Mirror basically mirrors whatever the top card is on the top of the deck. So let's say I play it on top of a 3. This card is a 3. If I play it on top of a special card like a skip, that mirrors that card and the next player gets skipped. So it mirrors whatever card it goes on top of. You have reset. You can think of this as sort of like a 0 that you're allowed to play anywhere. This will effectively make the stack, this card will be 0. So if I put it here, you can play anything of 0 or higher, or reset to 1 or higher, basically. The cards still stay here because there's a reason why the stack getting too big is a bad thing for some players. Similar to the reset, but unlike the rule I just mentioned, burn will literally just burn the entire pile, and the stack starts basically at 0 again. It's sort of like reset, but it clears the cards as well. Then there's the final 2 types of cards in the game. There's the asshole cards, and there's 2 types of asshole cards shown. There's a dog and there's a cat, and both of them have a little butthole showing, and the little butthole matches the little butthole on the little tokens. Basically, this gives you the right to pick any other player at the table to pick up all of the cards that are face up in the center of the pile. So that's a really mean thing to do to somebody, because the goal is to get rid of cards. So these are kind of painful to play. Now, unlike the other cards, these don't get played to the stack. These will get sat aside and will not be shuffled back in, or not shuffled. They won't be given to anybody ever again. So if anyone picks up the stack, these cards won't be in them. So these will get shuffled back into the deck at the beginning of a new round. So very nasty cards. You were perfectly fine to call the person who played this on you an asshole, and you're expected to. All right, so those are your special cards. Now, what happens if you don't have a card that matches any of the rules that are currently in, or the rule that's currently in play? Well, you have to draw all the cards that are up. So if I had a stack of cards here, and the top card was a 9, and I had no 9s and no 10 and no special cards, I'd have to pick up all of those cards, and now my hand is considerably fuller of cards. Now, the good thing is I'll have more options to play cards, and whenever the opportunity comes up, I can play multiple cards. I can play as many of a matching card as I want. Now, if at any point in time, 4 of the same number is ever placed down next to each other, so if someone played 3 additional 3s here, and there was all 4 3s touching, those 3s will be removed from the deck and placed out along with the asshole cards. So the number of cards will continue to shrink as the rounds go on. That's kind of helping the end around, so then players aren't just getting bogged down with huge stacks of cards in their hand. So if you can kind of put down large clusters of these 4 cards, it's better for you, and it helps thin out the deck a little bit. So once the deck runs out, you now are allowed to start, once the deck runs out, obviously you can't draw any more cards. Once you run out of cards in your hand, because you'll play just solely from what's left in your hand, you can then start playing from the tops. And basically, once these are gone, once this is gone, you have access to any of the cards showing up that are in front of you. So like in this case, I could play the 4 over there. Now when the 4 is shown, I now have access to that power bottom. So yeah, so you'll basically be able to utilize that once, you could take a shot if neither of these other cards work. You can always take a shot on that power bottom. And yeah, basically the first player to get rid of all of their cards will win the round and get a little asshole token. And like I said, the game doesn't really tell you how many rounds to play, so you can select how many rounds you would like to play. And in the rules, they also give you a number of variants. Let me show you. This is the rules, and basically this entire page is variants. So there's variants for basically all players will start with a number of tokens, and basically think of them as kind of like your health points in a way, but you're never really knocked out. But whenever you win a round, you steal tokens from another player rather than, you know, just gaining them from a central pool. There's some that will have you take drinks, because you know this is a game that's probably perfectly good for taking doing drinking game, for playing for a drinking game. Anytime you play one of the special cards, and there's a lot of other variants. Now, while the base game only supports up to 4 players, if you buy multiple copies of the game, you can mix them together and you can support up to 8 players or 12 players, and that's part of their orgy rule. I know. There's a reason why I told people if they didn't want to stick around, this is probably a good one to jump off of. But yeah, so it's a lot of fun. It's definitely a lot of potty humor, but I mean, as you could tell, you could literally reskin this game and take out all of that type of stuff, and it would be perfectly suitable for everybody. But the way the game currently is, it is definitely one that, you know, it's definitely going to have your asshole cards and stuff like that. But in terms of how it plays, it's really fun. I really enjoy this. I like a lot of simple card games like this because you can play as many complex games as you want, but sometimes you are around friends who don't want to play something that's really heavy. Something like this is very nice and simple. It resembles, you know, your traditional card game. There's a good chance that your parents or your grandparents or anybody in your family may have played castles or palaces or presidents or shithead or one of the many other names that this like style of game has been under. So it's something that could easily be played with a lot of people. So it's simple. It's got some interesting artwork, and I like it. So if it is something you would be interested in, this is going on Kickstarter in June. I'll have all the information in the description below. But if it looks like it's something you would enjoy, I encourage you to check out the Kickstarter, see if it's something you want to back. I'm Brian with WVGamers. Have a great day.